Welcome to the Springs Are Everywhere podcast, a production of SMI, the Spring Manufacturers Institute. I'm your host, Gary McCoy, Executive Director of SMI. Our podcast highlights important issues facing manufacturers. It also provides a brief glimpse of products that contain springs in our Did You Know segment at the end of the episode. Please take a moment to subscribe, rate us, and like us on YouTube and on your favorite podcast platforms like Spotify and Apple Podcasts. In today's edition, we'll chat with Desmond Clark. He's a former NFL tight end who now operates a logistics business and is a motivational speaker and author. In our second segment, we'll have a conversation with Harry Moser. He's the founder of the Reshoring Initiative. The organization's mission is to help bring manufacturing jobs back to the United States. The Springs Are Everywhere podcast is brought to you in part by our platinum sponsor, Gibbs Interwire. It's my pleasure to welcome Desmond Clark to the Springs Are Everywhere podcast. Desmond spent 12 years in the NFL as a tight end. He played for not only the Chicago Bears, but the Denver Broncos and the Miami Dolphins. He's now an entrepreneur serving as the owner, president, and CEO of Bear Down Logistics. Desmond is also a motivational speaker and the author of Principles of Winning, 5 Keys to Create a Standard of Excellence. I'm happy to announce that Desmond will be joining SMI in Puerto Rico for our 2026 annual meeting. Desmond, thanks for joining me today.
Thanks for having me on, Gary. I'm looking forward to this conversation and getting over to Puerto Rico to speak to your group there.
Yeah, well, Desmond, I got a chance to meet you earlier this year, and you talked about your childhood. It was a little bit challenging, and I know that it influenced your work ethic. And what's one piece of advice from your childhood that could be your mother or father that has most significantly impacted your journey?
Yeah, and Gary, if I can, I wouldn't put it on one piece of advice. I'll put it on the example that both showed from different areas. With my mom, her rebuilding herself and really reestablishing our family after my father got addicted to drugs and kind of our family just hit rock bottom. But watching her rebuild herself and really making a life for, her boys, that example and the example that my father showed when he just decided that he didn't want to be a drug addict no more. He said that was it. He got tired of being broke and he didn't want to be a drug addict. He walked himself to the hospital and checked in. Both of those examples showed me that you can overcome any obstacle if you are determined to do so.
Excellent. And this will sound funny, but I'm going to ask you, what would you consider your biggest failure in your career? And what is the most valuable lesson you've learned from it?
I think my biggest failure was coming out of the NFL, not knowing how to manage money properly. Thank God I didn't get to the point where, a lot of guys get, but when I look back on it and now being 48 and not 23, 24, man, it was just so much opportunity that was afforded to me because of the financial situation that I was in. But I wasn't one of those guys that was going out and buying a bunch of cars and doing stupid stuff with my money with a bunch of jewelry or anything like that. I was actually investing into businesses for myself and also investments. It just turned out that some of those investments were scams. And at the time, I didn't know a whole lot about business, and I should have been seeking advice and having partners that knew what they were doing instead of me just throwing money at it, just hoping it was going to work.
Desmond, you got a chance to go to the Super Bowl with the Bears, and what lessons did you learn from that appearance? I know you guys lost to the Colts, but we won't bring up old memories. But what are some things you've applied to business and your life today?
I mean, the thing about the Super Bowl, you go there and then the next year you think you're going to go back. And then it never happens again. So you really have to take advantage of the opportunity. You got to seize that opportunity right then and right there, because you may not get that opportunity again. That Super Bowl and me getting cut by the Denver Broncos, really, that's after a 51 catch season, 6 touchdowns. It just showed me that nothing is guaranteed. Because I thought I was coming back to the Denver Broncos, and I thought that, hey, I was the next up and coming tight end, and all of a sudden I'm on the streets without a team. And then, like I said, with the Super Bowl, you go there and you bring back just about everybody on that team, and you never make it back to another Super Bowl. So seizing that opportunity is really what I learned about going through that experience.
I know when I talked to you before, you noted that the average career for an NFL player is pretty short. And what mental tools did you use to prepare for? And I know you kind of touched on this earlier, but ultimately to thrive in your post-football afterlife.
Yeah, it took a little while, right? When I first was released and cut and forced into retirement, because that's exactly what it was. It's not like I was ready to go. I thought I still had a couple more years, but after trying to figure myself out and figure out what I wanted to do over 4 or 5 different years of retirement, you know, those lessons of getting up every day, doing things the right way, not taking any shortcuts, and really just putting in all out effort every day, right? I think that's where I've learned how to win. Is my effort is going to be unmatched for what I'm trying to get accomplished. A guy told me he said something interesting to me a couple of days ago. I was reaching out and he was like, "So what you doing now?" I was like, "I do logistics now." He's like, "How did you get into logistics?" I was like, total accident. And he said, "Man, isn't it marvelous what education and a well-lived life and experiences can do for you? When you have an education, when you have these experiences in life that you learn from, you can create anything that you want to. It's just a matter of what do you want to create, and are you focused enough to stay in it long enough to make it work?"
Desmond, I've heard you have a mantra: standards over feelings. Can you provide a specific, example? And we'll say in the business world, when you've had to lead with standards over emotions, even when it was difficult.
Yeah, I just had one yesterday. I had one of my agents screw up monumentally, and I still don't know if we lost the account or not. But he came and he was apologizing and like, he messed up. And what I told him is that it's done. There's nothing that we could do about the mess up. I can't get emotional about that now. Now it's all about what are we going to do moving forward? What's the standard? Because we fell below our standard. Now, how do we try to go back and reestablish that standard? So hopefully we get this customer back, and be able to go forward with them. And one of the things that we talked about, it was one screw up. So we have a 99.5% rating of getting it right, of doing the right thing. And he did something boneheaded, like very, very boneheaded. He knew he shouldn't have done it. It was like a mistake that he was rushing, and they were upset. So we're still trying to figure out, do we have that account or not? But the standard is the standard. There's no need of getting all emotional about it. Oh, well, and one of the things that he kept saying was, well, they should see that, we do a good job all the time and this and that. I was like, listen, we can't tell them how to feel, right? They have a standard. We have a standard. We just got to uphold our standards. And I told him, I was like, let all the emotions go. They're going to make a decision, and whatever decision that they make, we got to get right back to work.
Desmond, I know that you wrote a book, and tell me a little bit about why you decided to do that, and what's the key message that you wanted to deliver through that?
All right, so the real answer, and not the one that I can make up and make sound good, is that I started out writing it because I knew I was going to go out and do and become a professional speaker. But then as I was writing it, and my writer challenged me like big time as we were talking through the stories. And he was asking me, why did I want to do this? And what came about was I wanted to share my experiences and the things that I had went through, overcome, gained, all the challenges, just everything. And put those out there, because you never know who is going to connect with a story or say, you know what, I've been through that, or I can identify with that. And then someone could gain from it, because we gain from each other's experiences. And so I just wanted to put that out there for that reason. And then the other thing for me is I wanted to challenge people to be excellent. You know, I wanted to challenge people to see themselves at their highest level and maintain that, and not back down from it, not shy away from it, not let society tell you less than great. So that's why I wanted to put that book out. I had a chance when I was on LinkedIn. This guy wrote a wonderful story on LinkedIn about him going for the third time to pass his Series 66 or Series 7 test so he could become a financial advisor. And I read the story and I was like, oh man, that's a great story. And then I looked at the picture, Gary, and in the picture, my book was sitting on his desk. And
really?
that
Wow.
blew me away. I'll send you the link. It blew me away. I don't know this guy. And then just earlier this week, I got a text message from one of my customers saying, hey, I just bought a bunch of your books so I can hand them out to my team. That type of stuff is why I did it. And for me, it's just validation that, hey, something I did, something I said, something I experienced is helping someone else out. And that's really the biggest and most rewarding reason for me writing the book.
Well, Desmond, we're excited to have you come speak. Maybe in a minute or two, what's your primary message you want to get across to the folks who come to our meeting?
Yeah, so I believe that everyone has greatness in them, right? I believe that everyone has that, can perform that standard of excellence. And that's what it should be about. It should be about, hey, what can we accomplish while we are here on this short time on this earth, right? How can we help the next man? How can we help our family? How can we help our brothers, our sisters, and other people that we are around? And then specifically for the industry, what can I bring to this industry to make my industry better? But also, as I help make my industry better, I gain from that, and I'm able to benefit and go back and take that back to my family to make my family better. But it's all about mindset. It's all about identifying yourself as truly who you are, and then putting yourself, Gary, you heard me speak, and I talk about the power of relationships. When it comes down to honoring your name and your word and the power of relationships, that is the foundation and the basis for everything in life. And so I take those stories and I try to apply it to what you guys are doing and make it relevant to SMI and anybody who I'm speaking with, so they can take something back and just one or two things and say, you know what, I'm going to use that and I'm going to help make myself and someone else better.
Well, Desmond, we're looking forward to having you with us. And regarding the book, where can people buy that?
It's on Amazon. Just look up Desmond Clark, Principles of Winning. There's a link on there. It's real easy to get to. And then of course I can bring a bunch of them over to Puerto Rico in March too. Desmond,
and if somebody wanted to reach out to you beforehand, what's the best way to contact
LinkedIn
you?
is the best. Desmond Clark on LinkedIn. You guys will see the Bear Down Logistics and all of that good stuff. But that's the best way to reach out. I haven't been on social media hardly at all this year. So besides LinkedIn, but LinkedIn is good.
Well, fantastic. And thanks again for joining us today. And we'll look forward to hearing more about your story.
Absolutely.
When you come visit our meeting.
I'm looking forward to sharing.
Gibbs Interwire, North America's largest spring wire distributor, now offers precision draw, high-performance alloy wire through a partnership with Alloy Specialty Metals. With over 125 alloys, our goal is to deliver exactly what you need, precisely when and where you need it. We're committed to bringing you simpler sourcing with the highest quality results tailored to your requirements. As a longtime supporter of SMI's mission to inform the spring industry, Gibbs Interwire is proud to be the platinum sponsor of the Springs Are Everywhere podcast. For your quote today, call Gibbs Interwire at 800-800-4422 or visit us at gibbswire.com.
I'm honored to welcome Harry Moser to the Springs Are Everywhere podcast. Harry is the founder and president of the Reshoring Initiative. Many would call the Reshoring Initiative, championed by Harry, as the first foray into a national drive towards reviving manufacturing in the U.S. The mission of the organization is to bring good, well-paying manufacturing jobs back to the United States. Harry, thanks for joining me today.
It's great to be here, Gary. Just to play a little bit on what you just said, I was at an AMT, that's the people who put on IMTS, at an AMT conference about a year ago, and a friend came over and said, Harry, you're pretty lucky to have gotten on this trend before it got going. I said, actually, the trend is pretty lucky I got it going. So there's some truth in both perspectives.
Right. Well, I'll tip my hand to you because I think you had a big part in that. So, Harry, I know that in your former life, you used to sell EDM machines to some of our members who make springs. And tell me why you got this Reshoring Initiative started.
Yeah. So I was the president of Charmy, now called United Machining, for North America. And I was president for 25 years. Wonderful job, as good a job as anybody could ask for. But the parent company decided I was old enough to retire. And so it was time for me to no longer run the company. And I could have gone out and got another good job, no problem. But instead, I was motivated to do something about reshoring. And my background, sort of at a personal level, I grew up in Elizabeth, New Jersey, which is right across the river from New York City. And the biggest thing in town was Singer Sewing Machine. And the factory there in its day, like 1900, 1920, was the largest factory in the world, 3 million square feet, 5,000 workers. So a huge factory today. And my grandfather was a foreman. My dad ran a third of it. And I drove past 20 years ago, and nothing is made there anymore. Nothing of Singer, as far as I can tell, is made in the United States. Everything's imported from low-wage countries. So all those jobs lost. And during my career, I sold foundry equipment and CNC machine tools. And industry after industry, company after company I wanted to sell to went out of business before I could sell them anything, because U.S. manufacturing was declining so rapidly. And so that was my sort of micro motivation. At the macro level, at the national level, we've had a $1.2 trillion, that's with a T, $trillion goods trade deficit for several years now, and just slightly less before then. We have a $20 trillion imbalance in that Americans own 20 trillion less foreign assets than foreigners own U.S. assets. So that's something like half of the value of all the stocks traded in the United States, that in effect that foreigners are holding that much cash that they got by selling this stuff. They could come in and sort of take over the whole economy if they wanted to. We lost 5 million jobs to offshoring. There's a lack of self-sufficiency, things like rare earths, magnets, pharma, PPE. We have a weak defense industry, and we have a weak consumer goods industry surrounding it, such that if we ever got into war and we needed to call on the consumer goods industries to make things for defense, we don't have enough tool makers and spring makers and machine tools and factories and everything else. So I looked around and I said, something's got to be done. I've got the time and the contacts and the skills to do it. And I've been blessed to have it go rather well.
Yeah, Harry, let me ask you, what specific problems are you trying to solve with reshoring? I mean, is it related to cost, delivery, quality, risk, or all of the above?
When the offshoring really got started, let's say 30, 40 years ago, even 50 years ago, it was cost. The even 20, 25 years ago, the Chinese wage was 50 cents an hour, $1 an hour, and ours were already 18, 20, something like that. They're just huge differences. And the people there worked hard for their 50 cents an hour, and the costs were dramatically lower. They still are dramatically lower. China cost on average is maybe 60% of U.S. cost, depending on material content and labor and automation, all kinds of things. But cost was the original thing. And like I say, maybe U.S. is 50-60% above China, maybe 10-20% above Germany, Italy, Japan, South Korea, and so on, the higher wage countries. But now, in addition, the U.S. has a shortage of skilled workforce because we don't have a good apprenticeship program. We don't have a good educational system, and then we don't have a good apprenticeship training program. We have a lack of local components. Back 50, 70 years ago, anything you could get in the world, you can make in the United States. Now there's all kinds of categories. We hear about the rare earth minerals, all these things that we don't make here. And so companies think about coming over and say, I'm not so sure. Maybe I can't get what I need. Productivity issues. In the U.S., manufacturing productivity has grown less than 1% a year for the last 15 years. And China, it's reported to be growing 6% a year. And that's now from a pretty high productivity base because they've installed so much new equipment, so many robots, et cetera, et cetera. Even innovation is impacted. You see, China's starting to innovate rather well. They're not just copying anymore. And partially that's because they've got engineering and manufacturing next to each other and working together on the problem, whereas we tend to have engineering here and manufacturing over there, which isn't as an efficient a way to innovate. So there's a lot of things that need to be overcome. But if we could get the cost item figured out, then companies would work through the rest of the problems.
Yeah, so cost was originally probably the biggest driver, is what you're saying. So how does reshoring now align with the company's long-term competitive strategy?
Well, I put together a couple of scenarios sort of to talk about. So if imports are major competitors, so if a spring company, for example, is seeing imports in their competitive mix, then and the company wants to grow. Well, for example, maybe in standard springs because they've been doing a lot of specials. For example, that tends to be what happens. And if that's the case, then competing with those imports is a key strategy, and they need to take some of that business back. And we have TCO and things like that to help them do that. If the company has been in decline, it's been declined significantly because the import of springs, or maybe the import of products that have a lot of springs in them, because I'm sure the springs to some extent are coming in embedded in some kind of an assembly. And then they have to convince the guy who assembles the thing to assemble them here and buy springs from the U.S. instead of buying springs from offshore. So there are a couple of different strategic thought processes. But basically, if they want to sell more, they got two choices. They can compete with each other and whack the price down and everybody hurt, or they can compete with the other guy from offshore and make the pie bigger. And I think it's more fun to make the pie bigger.
Yeah, so you mentioned the total cost of ownership, and I know you have an estimator tool. So it seems like that evaluating that total cost and financial viability of reshoring is a critical step.
No question about it. We did a survey in the first quarter of 2025, and we found that about 30% of big companies, I called them OEMs, that 30% of them were using total cost of ownership to make their decisions about sourcing and plant siting. And the other 70% were using generally less complete measures. So many of them were looking just at the wage rate or just at the price, the FOB price or ex works price. What am I paying somebody in the U.S. versus what am I paying somebody in China? And we're not even adding in the duty and the freight and the carrying cost of inventory, much less things like geopolitical risk that the supplier is going to be cut off if something happens over Taiwan. And so a series of considerations like that they're ignoring. And when they convert and they come start using total cost of ownership, which is a software free online on our website, reshorenow.org, okay, and they use it for free. And when they do that, they fill in all the information, and our thing does the calculating and comparing methodologies based just on price comparing U.S. to China, based just on price, the U.S. wins 8% of the time. Based on total cost of ownership, 32% of the time. And if there's a 15% tariff, fairly typical tariff, then 46% of the time. And if it's China and there's a 50% tariff, then we win 60% of the time. So getting the customer to do the math correctly makes a big difference of whether you're going to win or you're going to lose the order. And so we encourage the big companies to use the tool, but also the small companies to encourage the big companies. So as an example, a company I knew pretty well outside Chicago, so not too far from you in Woodridge, called Morey Corp, Morey Corp. They're an EMS company. They make printed circuit boards, good sized company, 100 million a year, so substantial company. And they came to me about 6 years ago and said, Harry, we got a problem, need your help. I said, what's the problem? Well, big customer got lower priced order from Chinese competitor. I think we're going to lose the order. So I helped them do the TCO calculation and show their customer that even though Morey's price was higher than the Chinese, the total cost to the customer was lower, considering all those factors I described. And I got a letter from them saying that was the key to winning a $60 million order.
Wow.
I'd be delighted to help any of your members win a $500,000 order or $1 million order. Something that would
like
make them
that,
really
right?
happy.
Yeah. So Harry, you mentioned your survey. What are some other things you found from that survey that might be interesting?
Yeah, delivery got a lot of has a lot of value. So we asked customers, we asked respondents at the big companies, how much more would you pay for a product that had 1 week delivery instead of a 6 week delivery, which would be 6 week be typically, putting something on a boat and sending it over here. And maybe springs are air freighted. I don't know, but most things come out by boat. So, and about 40% of them were willing to pay anywhere from 5 to 20% more for that 1 week delivery. So I urge companies to figure out what you have to do from the first to quote quick, and then start making it quick and get it out of your factory as fast as the Chinese or whomever can get it out of their factory. And if you do that, then you've got all that shipping time difference, whether it's on the spring or it's on some kind of assembly that weighs enough to want to put it in a boat. And if you can pick up that 6 weeks, that's a huge advantage for the customer because he has less inventory. He knows if something goes wrong and there's some bad ones, he can get new ones from you in a couple of days or a week or whatever. And if he has a surge of business, you can replenish quickly, whereas the guy halfway around the world is going to take a lot longer. So I think delivery is very important. We asked one of the most important questions. We asked the companies, how much of what you now import would you reshore under each of these conditions? So, and they were decent responses for lower corporate taxes, less regulations, lower dollar, 15% tariffs, all those things got 15, 20% they'd bring back. But the highest response rate was if we had the skilled workforce quality and quantity that is needed so that they could expand without having to have a real worry about finding the people they needed to run the operation. And so and fortunately the country seems to be coming around. I read about more training programs all the time, apprentice programs, community colleges, and the president came out with an executive order a few months ago calling for 1 million more apprentices. So there's starting to be motion in that direction of getting our workforce up to a world-class level. And when that happens, if a factory wants to increase its output by 50%, it needs 40 or 50% more people. If you don't have the people, it's not going to happen unless you can automate. So we also recommend automation. But even if you automate as much as you can, it's not enough, because the Chinese are automating as much as they can, and their wages are still a third of ours. And so I say it's like Alice in Wonderland. You have to run as hard as you can just to sort of stay even, with the other guy. And you have to run even faster than that if you want to get ahead.
That's a good one.
A couple of thoughts. We have a couple of things that we could do that would help, organizations, help spring manufacturers advance this reshoring. Now, tell us about your reshoring successes. For example, if a couple of you came through with some good stories, with a customer name or without, if necessary, we could get together with SMI and do a nice article about this members who have reshored, who have overcome the price issue, the labor cost issue, the whatever, and based on quality, delivery, what have you, that they're winning. They're winning the game. And the more companies that see that, the more buyers that see that, the more likely they are to think about total cost. The more likely they are to, call an SMI member instead of somebody over in China or somewhere to get the springs they need. We have a National Metalworking Reshoring Award that many of the associations like FMA, PMA, SME, AMT support. And every year we give that out to one or two companies. So if any of you have reshored significantly, get in touch with me. We'll tell you how to apply for that. When you're competing with imports, we also surveyed the contract manufacturers, and 30% of them said they use TCO when they're selling, but that means 70% of them do not. So if you're not using it when you're selling against imports, then you should be. You're missing the opportunity to level the playing field as best you can. Once this is going to be recording, and if you think it makes a good case for you as opposed to the import, bring in some donuts and get your customer to watch the recording and hopefully learn something to know that they should buy from you. Recruit and train skilled workforce. I mean, one of the reasons smart kids in the last 10, 20 years haven't gone into manufacturing is because they thought the industry was disappearing. Well, no, it's not disappearing. Workforce has leveled down, is actually coming up a little bit. Reshoring, 250,000 jobs per year coming back from reshoring and foreign direct investment. Show the kids the statistics from our website and say, hey, this is once again a great career, a great place to solid middle class success.
A lot of great stuff, Harry. So you mentioned your website. How's the best way to reach you if they want to talk more about this?
Well, So I'm Harry.Moser, Moser, at reshorenow.org, or you go to the website, which is reshorenow.org, and you'll find info at, and if you do info at reshorenow.org, it'll come to me. You'll still get to Harry. And phone is 847-867-1144. Call me and say, Harry, we got an opportunity, or we got a problem, or we got something. Okay, let's work it out together.
Harry, always a delight to see you and talk to you. You've written some articles for our magazine in the past, and just want to say keep up the good fight, and glad to have you on the program today.
Gary, great to be here.
In addition to Gibbs Interwire, the Springs Are Everywhere podcast has been made possible by the generous support of our silver sponsor, Automated Industrial Motion. AIM is a world-class leader in the design, manufacture, and service of spring coiling machines and wire forming equipment. You can learn more at aimcoil.com.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Springs Are Everywhere podcast. I want to thank my guests, Desmond Clark and Harry Moser, for joining the program today. Be sure to browse our archives for more great content from past episodes. You can learn more about SMI at smihq.org. Be sure to subscribe, rate us, and like us on YouTube and on your favorite podcast platforms like Spotify and Apple Podcasts. This program would not be possible without the generous support of our platinum sponsor, Gibbs Interwire, and our silver sponsor, Automated Industrial Motion.
Have you ever wondered why your computer keyboard makes a clicking sound? Springs in computer keyboards, particularly in mechanical keyboards, serve as a primary mechanism for actuation and tactile feedback for each key. They provide the necessary resistance to register a keystroke and determine the force required to press the key, the actuation force. Upon release, the springs return the keycap to its original position, preparing it for the next press. Different spring designs are used to create varied typing experiences, such as clicky, tactile, or linear feels. Just another reminder that springs are everywhere, sometimes even on the desk where your computer keyboard sits.